On the day of my brother's wedding, Daniel and I were in the hotel's waiting room. We were called in the middle of the wedding by the bride, Hannah's parents. I hear you're a poor, cheating scumbag with debts everywhere. It's embarrassing to have someone like you as a relative. They looked at me with disdain. These were baseless lies. Just as I was about to respond, Stella, Hannah's mom, twisted her mouth and spat out ugly words. Poor people can watch from the back. If you don't like it, just leave. Unbelievable. Shocked, I clenched my fists tightly. At that moment, Daniel spoke casually. Shall we go home? Sure. I nodded without hesitation. Once outside the venue, my phone started ringing violently. It was a frantic call from Stella. What do you think you're doing? Stella screamed, panicked. She must have been shocked by the next program announced by the MC. This program can't be included. I calmly listened to her strained voice. The venue would become chaotic. But it wasn't our problem. It was all Hannah's fault. My name is Lily Parker, 31 years old. I work in an office at a small company. I got married 3 years ago and live with my husband Daniel. We've been together since college, so it's been over 10 years now. We've become like an old couple and rarely fight these days. One day, I got a call from my brother. He told me he was getting married. My brother Aiden is 25 years old. He works at a big company and is serious by nature. He hadn't had much luck with women, but he finally found someone good. I was as happy as if it were my own news and couldn't help smiling. We talked about how they met, and Aiden and I got excited. None had I known at that time. This call was just the beginning of the series of events. Time passed. Aiden called again, saying he'd be passing near our house and would come by with his fiancée to introduce her. Excited, I waited for the doorbell to ring. Hey sis, long time no see. Nice to meet you, I'm Hannah Ross. Next to Aiden was his fiancée, Hannah, smiling as she greeted us. I gasped at her sight. She was stunningly beautiful, with sharp features and a slim figure like a model. Aiden mentioned that she came from a wealthy family. I was amazed that such a person existed, and as I was thinking that, Daniel came out from the back room. Long time no see, Aiden. Nice to meet you too, Hannah. I'm Daniel Parker. At that moment, Hannah's eyes widened as if struck by lightning. She muttered while trembling. Daniel Parker. As she looked back and forth between us, her face turned furious. Aiden, seeing the situation, asked, "What's wrong?" Hannah quickly regained her composure and hastily replied, "It's nothing." There was a moment of tension, but what was that all about? Afterwards, we brought Aiden and Hannah into the living room. We had a normal conversation while snacking, and nothing else unusual happened. In the end, they left after about an hour. Good for Aiden. He found a good person and looks happy. Yeah, but I felt something off about Hannah's attitude. Didn't it seem like she was glaring at us? Do you know her? What? No way. I think I've heard the name Hannah before, but I don't recognize her face. Besides, if she were that pretty, there's no way I'd forget. His comment about her being pretty made me glare at him. Well, I understand the feeling given how beautiful she is, but still. Maybe she looked like she was glaring because she was nervous. Well, maybe. I nodded vaguely at Daniel's nonchalant words. I still felt uneasy, but soon forgot about it. Because after that, a series of major events occurred. I'm home. One day, when I came home, Daniel was sitting on the living room couch with a puzzled look. In his hand were several photos. What are you looking at? You look serious. These were in our mailbox. He handed me the photos. They showed me entering a hotel with an unknown man. What the hell is this? I screamed in shock, I had no memory of doing such a thing. This is not me. This must be a mistake. I know. Look here. Daniel interrupted me, pointing to a part of the photo. It appeared to be a part of a building, but it was distorted. This shows it's been edited. These are fake images. You mean they're made up? The problem is, someone went through the trouble to make these and put them in our mailbox. Daniel's dry voice made my heart feel cold. Someone did this on purpose. But why? Have you had any fights with anyone recently? Any trouble? No, not at all. Do you think someone has a grudge against me? It's a possibility. His casual tone made me uneasy. I denied it strongly to shake off the bad feeling. Stop it. I have no idea who would do this. Let's just throw these creepy photos away. I grabbed the photos from Daniel and threw them in the trash can. Who would benefit from making these photos? It was eerie, but without any leads, there was nothing we could do. We just had to forget about it. But the incidents didn't stop there. One day on a weekend, I was vacuuming the living room when the doorbell rang. Yes. I opened the front door. It was a woman from the neighboring house. She was a bit older than me, and we chatted occasionally. What brings you here? The housewife, looking confused, handed me a piece of paper. Well, this was in our mailbox. What? When she unfolded the paper, I was shocked. In large letters, it read, Lily Parker is a cheater and having affairs everywhere. She loves shopping and is in debt to loan sharks. What is this? It seems similar papers were put in the mailboxes of all the houses in the neighborhood. I don't know who did it. No way. I muttered in disbelief, and the housewife hurriedly continued. Of course, I know you're not like that, but people who don't know you might believe it, so. This is terrible. I need to check if others receive this too. Thank you for telling me and sorry for the trouble. At that moment, Daniel seemed to have heard our conversation from the hallway and walked over. Morning, Lily. What's going on? Daniel, look at this. I showed him the paper and explained what the neighbor had told me. Daniel's expression changed. What is this? What's going on? Who would do such a thing? I don't know, but it seems these strange papers were put in many mailboxes. I'm going to check. I'll go with you. We divided up and went to the neighboring houses. Sure enough, most houses had received similar papers slandering me. When someone was home, I apologized for the trouble and patiently explained that it was all false. Most people were sympathetic and tried to comfort us. But there were a few who didn't know me well and looked at me with suspicion. Even though I hadn't done anything wrong, who would spread such malicious rumors about me? After visiting several houses, we returned home. It was past noon. Exhausted, I collapsed on the couch. Covering my face with my hands, tears began to flow from my eyes. Why is this happening to me? First, the fake photos of a false affair, and now this, someone was trying to ruin my life. But I had no idea who it could be. I had never been in any serious trouble before. Daniel spoke with a serious expression. This is too much. Maybe we should talk to the police. At that moment, the doorbell rang again. Hesitantly, I answered the door, and there stood Aiden. Aiden, you scared me, I said with a hint of annoyance. Aiden looked a bit worn out. Sis, I'm sorry for coming suddenly. I need to talk to you. Talk about what? I wanted to say this wasn't the time, but I held back and invited Aiden into the living room. Since he said he hadn't had lunch, I made some quick meal. We talked while eating with Daniel. I'm having a disagreement with Hannah about the wedding program. You know, the slideshow of childhood and school photos. I wanted to do it because it moved me at a friend's wedding, but Hannah is strongly against it. I almost blurted out, "Is that all?" "Just a lover's quarrel," I said, a bit exasperated. That's something you two need to discuss. It might sound harsh, but we can't help you with that. And I'm dealing with my own issues right now. But Aiden interrupted, raising his voice. It's not just that. Listen to the rest. I don't know what to do anymore. His desperation confused me. It seemed he was genuinely troubled. So we decided to hear him out. What he said next was shocking. I couldn't believe it was happening. From there, things spiraled in an unexpected direction. A few months later. Today is Aiden's wedding day. A lot has happened since then, but the day has finally arrived. I repeatedly asked Aiden if he was sure about having this wedding. Aiden, exhausted, said, I have an idea. If that's the case, then it can't be helped. The decision is in Aiden's hand. I left the final decision to Aiden and came here today. Regardless of our feelings, the ceremony proceeded smoothly. There was a toast and cake cutting, followed by the bride and groom leaving the room. It was more relaxed than I had expected. Just as I started to relax, I noticed a tense gaze directed at me. Looking around, I saw Hannah's parents nearby. Both were glaring at us. Their expressions were so intense that I tensed up instinctively. Then they walked over to our table and spoke to me. You're Aiden's sister, right? Could we have a word? Yes, okay. Stella, wearing an expensive-looking dress, had a severe expression. She said we couldn't talk here and tried to lead me to the waiting room. Sensing the situation, Daniel said, I'll go too. Once Daniel and I entered the waiting room, Stella said something shocking. I hear you're out partying with men every night and borrowing money from loan sharks. What? I was dumbfounded by the sudden accusation. Without giving me a chance to explain, Stella continued to hurl insults. Don't bother denying it. I know all about you. It's embarrassing to have someone like you as a relative. Cheating, borrowing money. It was the same slander from those papers distributed in the neighborhood. Baseless lies. But to hear Hannah's parents say the same things. They looked at me with disdain. Just as I was about to retort, Stella twisted her mouth and spat out ugly words. Poor people can watch from the back. If you don't like it, just leave. What? Unbelievable. Why do I have to put up with this? As I clenched my fists tightly, Daniel spoke lightly. Shall we go home then? Yes. I nodded without hesitation. We knew why they believed and repeated the lies from those papers. We had learned the truth from my brother. About 5 minutes after stepping out into the lobby, my phone started ringing violently. It was a frantic call from Stella. What do you think you're doing? Stella screamed, panicked. The MC must have just announced the next special program as the bride and groom re-entered the room. Hearing that, they couldn't believe their ears. My brother insisted on including it, so we added it at the last minute. Is there a problem? You can't include that program. I listened calmly to Stella's strained voice. The venue would become chaotic. But it was none of our business. It was all Hannah's fault. No. After a while, we could hear Hannah's screams from outside. It was exactly as expected. My mother must be filming the scene inside. I contacted her and asked her to share the video with my phone. Soon, I received the footage on my phone. On the big screen in the venue, images of Hannah's childhood and middle school years were being shown. The guests started to buzz. Is that Hannah? Did she look like that? Isn't she a completely different person? Could this be? Yes, this was Hannah's pre-surgery face. Hannah had undergone plastic surgery. We found out the truth from Aiden that day. Hannah was against showing her childhood photos. Curious, Aiden had opened her yearbook when she left the room. Considering how beautiful she is, he thought she must have been exceptionally pretty even back in school. He assumed she was embarrassed by some minor issue, like a little weight gain. But when Aiden found her name in the yearbook, to his surprise, the face in the photo looked nothing like Hannah now. It was a different person. Aiden double-checked the name several times, but it was definitely Hannah Ross. What was going on? Panicked, Aiden had quickly taken a photo with his phone. Then he came to our house for advice. Daniel and I were initially skeptical. It seemed impossible for someone to be a completely different person. But when we saw the old photo of Hannah that Aiden had taken, we were speechless. At that moment, Daniel remembered everything. Could it be her? Back in college, Daniel worked part-time as a tutor. One of his students was Hannah, who was a middle schooler at the time. Her face was so different that he didn't recognize her as the same person. But when she was a middle school student, she was far from being cute. She was also much chubbier than she is now. However, her attitude during the lesson was never bad. She listened intently to Daniel and was serious about her studies. That's because Hannah admired Daniel greatly. At first, he was just the tutor. But over time, her admiration turned into a fierce crush. She would often gaze at him with intense eyes, give him gifts, and insist on physical affection. Daniel was somewhat troubled by Hannah's behavior, but she wasn't the only student who acted this way. Several middle school students had similar crushes on Daniel and would give him gifts. So, Daniel thought Hannah's actions were just a typical adolescent crush. He figured it was temporary and that she would forget about it in time. He didn't pay much attention to it. Of course, he couldn't be too cold to his students, but he didn't accept her affection either. He just waited for her feelings to chill. Later, Hannah successfully got into her desired high school. Daniel was happy for her, but then Hannah confessed her feelings to him. He was surprised, but didn't take her seriously. To Daniel, Hannah was just one of many students. Besides, he was already dating me at the time, and a college student would never get serious about a middle schooler. But he felt that harshly rejecting her wasn't right, so he told her maybe when she was an adult and left it at that. After that, Daniel got busy with job hunting and quit his tutoring job. He lost contact with Hannah. That's all I know. I never saw her again after that. Aiden was shocked by Daniel's story. So her face changed after that. Why would she do that? Maybe you should ask her directly. It's a hard question, but you need to know if she had plastic surgery. I cautiously suggested. Aiden must have dreaded knowing the truth. So that's why she didn't want to show photos from her childhood or school days. Aiden sighed deeply. The room fell silent. But then I had a thought. Come to think of it, the strange photos and the slanderous papers started appearing right after we met Hannah. What strange photos and papers? Where? I told Aiden about the recent incidents. Maybe, just maybe, he murmured and fell silent. He abruptly ended the conversation and left our house. Later, Aiden told us that he had confronted Hannah about the yearbook photos. Are these photos of you? Why does your face look different? Did you? You looked at my album without permission. Hannah was furious. After a huge argument, she finally confessed the truth. Yes, Daniel rejected me when I was in middle school. I was ugly and fat. So when I started high school, I begged my parents to let me go to a spa. I worked out hard and lost 40 pounds. Before college, I had plastic surgery to leave my old self behind. Dieting was one thing, but major plastic surgery was another ordeal. Her parents were initially against it, but she dramatically insisted, saying, "I can't live with this face," and even went on a hunger strike, refusing to eat if they didn't allow the surgery. Seeing her determination, her parents reluctantly agreed. Finally, Hannah underwent the surgery and transformed into a new person. After starting college, she tried to find Daniel again, but couldn't. That's because Daniel had taken a job out of town right after graduating. He wasn't in the area. We had a long-distance relationship for a while, and 3 years ago, he returned to our local branch, and we got married. Because of this, Hannah temporarily gave up on Daniel. But she still wanted to make the most of her newfound beauty and marry into a wealthy family. That's when she met Aiden, who worked at a big company. Aiden was serious and inexperienced with women, so he didn't notice Hannah's true nature, and their marriage plans progressed. Then, when she came to meet Aiden's sister, which means myself, she unexpectedly reunited with Daniel. Her longtime crush, Daniel, was already married. Hannah was devastated. I've loved Daniel for so long. How could he marry such a mediocre woman? It's unbelievable. Her anger quickly turned towards me. Daniel has been deceived by that woman. I can tell. She's a terrible person. But kind-hearted Daniel doesn't see it, so I sent him the evidence. Hannah confessed. She had fabricated photos of me having an affair and distributed papers around the neighborhood claiming I was a promiscuous woman with debts. Of course, she had also filled her parents' heads with lies about me. Unfaithful, manipulating men, borrowing money from loan sharks. Hannah's parents believed her lies and despised me. That's why they insulted me, telling me to watch the wedding from the back because I was poor. But they were just puppets in Hannah's scheme. Hannah was the true villain. Knowing the truth right before the wedding, Aiden still struggled with the decision to call it off. Hannah was adamant. I'm marrying you for your money. You work at a big company, so you have more money than Daniel. So, I won't cancel the wedding. Daniel will be my boyfriend. With my current looks, he won't refuse, right? No one with such arrogance would ever change. Aiden, being inexperienced with women, was perhaps too naive. He pleaded with Hannah to be reasonable and face the truth. He also begged her to apologize to me for the harassment. But Hannah refused to change her mind. I'm not cancelling the wedding. Daniel and I are meant to be. Aiden tried to persuade her until the last moment, but the deadline to cancel the wedding passed. They proceeded with the wedding, but Aiden had already realized it was hopeless. Hannah insulted me and even admitted she was marrying Aiden for his money. Dealing with Hannah took a toll on Aiden. He secretly made a video using old photos and decided to play it at the wedding. Daniel and I sat in the lobby, watching the video on my phone. What? Plastic surgery? Wow. The whispers from the guests were audible. In the video, Hannah looked down, her face red with anger. Her body trembled with rage, visible even through the screen. Unable to bear it, she screamed and ran out of the venue. She stopped when she saw me in the lobby, her face red and tears running down her face. This is your plot, Lily Parker. I'll never forgive you. Her fury made me step back, and then Aiden came running after her. Hannah, I asked the venue to show those photos. You spread lies and ruined my sister's reputation. This was unacceptable, despite my warnings. You didn't stop. I showed the photos to make you realize the gravity of your actions. Aiden spoke bitterly, but Hannah ignored him, crying and yelling. So what? The woman who married Daniel must be punished, but showing my old face in front of everyone. I can't live anymore. How could you do this to me? Her childish outburst left us stunned. She felt no remorse for spreading lies and ruining my reputation. She was utterly self-centered. Seeing Hannah's selfishness, I felt a deep sense of futility. The venue was in chaos after the bride and groom disappeared. Of course, the wedding was cancelled. Later, Hannah, her parents, and Aiden had a discussion. Hannah's parents were furious about the photos, but they fell silent when confronted about the slanderous papers. The discussion proceeded smoothly, and they decided to break up. Hannah was mostly silent and expressionless. Aiden said her eerie calmness was unsettling, but he was relieved to cut ties with her. The cost of the wedding was a painful lesson, but fortunately, They hadn't registered their marriage. Aiden's record remained clean. The problem was resolving. We hoped to return to our normal lives soon. But then, one evening, I'm home. As usual, I heard Daniel's voice. I replied, "Welcome back," as I set the table. Daniel went to his room to change into his casual clothes. The next moment, "What are you doing?" I heard Daniel scream. Realizing something was wrong, I rushed to his room. When I opened the door, I saw a shocking sight. What happened? There was a woman hiding under Daniel's desk. Seeing her, Daniel was paralyzed with fear. "Why are you surprised? I did all this for you, Daniel. I just want you to notice me." The sweet voice was unmistakably Hannah's. She must have sneaked into Daniel's room while we were out. But her face had changed again. "You like this face, right? So, I became like this. Even though I hated it, you get it, right? I'm younger and richer than her, with the same face. I'd be better, right?" Hannah's face looked exactly like mine as she smiled. "No way." I stepped back, my voice trembling. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It felt like a nightmare, and I was getting dizzy. Daniel was pale, his mouth hanging open. Then we heard a voice from the front door. Hannah, are you there?" It was Hannah's parents who barged in. Hannah ignored them and tried to approach Daniel. Hannah's dad, Jackson, restrained her. "Calm down, Hannah. Let me go. I'm going to marry Daniel. I've loved him more than that woman's done." Hannah screamed, tears streaming down her face, thrashing like a wild beast. She didn't seem human anymore. She was like a monster. "I'm calling the police." When I said that, Stella screamed. "No, if you do that, Hannah's life will be ruined." Her words made my blood boil. My fear vanished, replaced by anger. "Are you seriously worried about your reputation now? I've suffered so much because of her grudge. She broke into our house. It's a crime. You should have raised her better." I shouted, and Stella started to cry. "But we love our daughter. We'll keep a close eye on her. Please don't call the police." When I looked again, both of Hannah's parents were kneeling. Hannah was crying like a child. This was driving me crazy. We were exhausted and told them to never come back and kicked them out. We stared at Daniel's scattered room in shock. The window was open. We must have forgotten to close the glass door. Hannah must have entered through there. Had she been hiding here all day? Her obsession was terrifying. "I'm sorry, Lily. It's my fault you got involved in this." Daniel, looking drained, whispered, "It's not your fault, Daniel. No one should be so obsessed with someone they were rejected by 10 years ago. And to go as far as changing her face to look like me." I shivered as I spoke. Hannah's thinking was insane. She would do anything to get what she wanted, even if it defied common sense. Later, we had another discussion with Hannah's parents. They signed an agreement to stay away from us. It stated that if they broke it, we'd call the police. Hannah agreed to get counseling at our suggestion. Her behavior wasn't normal. She had secretly undergone another surgery without her parents knowing it. Even they couldn't stop her anymore. It was time to seek professional help. Having her arrested for trespassing was easy. But unless she changed her mindset, it wouldn't help. She'd keep coming back. A doctor diagnosed her with a severe mental illness and plastic surgery addiction. They recommended hospitalization. At first, Hannah refused in a state of confusion, but with persistent persuasion from the doctors and nurses, she finally agreed. She is now in a psychiatric hospital, receiving medication and counseling. She occasionally has moments of clarity. However, her memory is patchy, and it will take time for her to return to a normal life. Hannah's parents had spoiled her for years. I hope they now realize the need to properly guide her and discipline her wrongdoings. Since then, I've apologized to the neighbors with Hannah's parents. By participating in community events, I managed to clear my name. Living here with a bad reputation would have been impossible. It took time, but we resolved the issue. As for Aidan, he was depressed for a while. I'm done with women for now. I'll focus on work. Don't think all women are like this. There are good ones out there. I could only offer him words of encouragement. But there are countless opportunities to meet someone. Though he drew the short straw with Hannah, I believe there is a wonderful woman for him somewhere. It doesn't have to be about romance. I just want Aidan to find happiness. As his sister, that's my only wish.